You can think of I-4 as the most disruptive feature in the state of Florida for wildlife. It severs the state into two halves. The possibility of puncturing that I-4 wall and creating a terrestrial crossing that a black bear might find its way to is a significant undertaking. And that's what this crossing represents. It represents reestablishing permeability for terrestrial wildlife that hasn't been there for half a century. You have all this tremendous habitat north of I-4 that is essentially genetically disconnected from the Everglades and the headwaters of the Everglades south. This changes that.
We caught M34 towards the end of our project after weeks and weeks of striking out to catch 3 bears. One of the bears was M34, and he was the smallest. He was definitely a subadult at the time. We caught him actually twice that fall. And the first time we were excited, of course we were excited to get a collar out. We were a little worried that he was small. We caught him again the next month. The second time we caught him, it was like, oh, here's this guy again. Okay, his collar still fits, he's alive, get him out of the trap. That day we actually caught 2 other bears. And it was, in my memory, the hottest day of trapping I can ever remember. It was October, and it was like 95 degrees. It shouldn't have been that hot, but it was punishing. And we were just really eager to get these bears out of the trap, get them in the shade, and get them cooled off. It was really an afterthought, M34. And he stayed that way. In the spring, the following year, we saw this bear take off on this incredible dispersal event over 500 miles in just a matter of 2 months. He took this kind of winding route north from Sebring all the way to the town of Celebration on I-4. And you look at the data and figure out like when he was doing all this. He was moving mostly at nighttime. He's waiting till the cover of darkness. He was using the woods to conceal his movements. He would often pause in little woodlots and wait for 8 to 12 hours until darkness and everything calmed down, and then he would make his move across a busy road. So then we look at his movements over that, it's actually like 2 or 3 days that he hangs out right on I-4. He tries to cross, doesn't really do it. He's at one point his GPS points are like 10 yards off the pavement. And then he kind of leaves the woodlot and he parallels the highway for a day or two, kind of walking southwest as if to go to Lakeland. And he's right on the verge of the highway, using the little bits of forest and tree cover to follow the highway. And he comes back to the highway and looks again. It's almost like he's following his nose. There's something up there that I want to try to get to, but I can't. Nothing rivals M34 in terms of the expanse, like the sudden leaving altogether of the home range. The scale of the movements was fascinating to see, eye-opening. None of that, it would seem, made him bold enough to try to cross I-4, to actually cross I-4. I-4 is divided highway, and you imagine like a wall of sound. Eventually, he just kind of stops trying to get across and makes a turn and heads back south down the Lake Wales Ridge, continues from there. And it ultimately ended up being just like an inspiring story for lots of people beyond just those of us on the project.
So M34 was a great storyteller. Seeing his story of his struggle, I think really helped put it to light of why this crossing is needed. If I could say anything to M34, it would be thank you. Thank you for helping inspire this entire project. Being a Florida native, helping the wildlife, and growing up where I did, on acreage and seeing bobcats and foxes denning in my parents' front yard. Just being around nature in general has always been a part of me. It's always been a way I was raised. And then seeing some of the plight of the panther that's been happening. In the 90s, there were only like 20 panthers. And seeing it be able to raise to potentially 200 in this population right now. For them to lose the connectivity due to development and they're being pushed out of the lands that are native to them, and seeing how this has affected the species. And even now with the kittens, if you've seen the news and the videos of the kittens going through these diseases, I just don't want the panthers to start sliding back to how they were in the 90s with all of the genetic disorders and the diseases. And that's where we'll slide back to if we don't do something about this now.
When I started to engage in some of these critical areas for black bears and panthers, I got together a partner meeting and invited a bunch of the stakeholders and included FDOT. What I found out from that first engagement was that FDOT has a lot of staff members with significant expertise and time spent wrestling with the same issues that I wrestle with at the Florida Wildlife Corridor. They pore over the maps and the data. They're looking at these routes for wildlife and where are collision hotspots in the network of roads that they need to rethink. So they've been planning for these things. And most of the people that I encounter in conservation had not really been aware of the depth that they've given this issue, the thought, the planning that's in there. FDOT has been a great partner, and we've had tremendous exchanges of information, of priorities, and I've never had an opportunity where I've said, hey, can someone from the FDOT come to this meeting or engage in this conversation, and have them not show up. FDOT has shown up.
This project started around 2015, which is early on in my career. So I've been very fortunate to be able to see it through planning all the way through to construction. Seeing the ideas that we've all come up with and the brainstorming that everybody has done, to putting it to paper, to actually seeing the design and the CAD work for it, and then altering it even further from there, and then eventually seeing dirt turn on this project. And then seeing the crossings being built and put in to the point where they are now. It's been very rewarding and very exciting to actually see something that you've kind of come up with in your head, see it, and just knowing what a great impact this is gonna have, not only for animals, for the traveling public that's coming and vacationing or tourists or using this, to even the locals. FDOT internally has put a process together and a manual. We're looking at wildlife crossings or the potential to put them into each and every project that we do. And so that's something that wasn't mandated by any other state or federal agency. We've done that internally to ensure that we are doing our part for the environment as well. And so that starts early on with planning. As we're looking at a potential project, if it's needed or not, one of the items that we look for is, should a wildlife crossing or enhancement be included with considering this project?
This has been a long time in the making, and I'm really, really excited to see it finally come to fruition. You know, I've been working on this project since really probably 2015 when we first started, and we authorized to do a study on the wildlife crossings within Polk County. And then from there, we met with the key stakeholders, and we talked about the different locations, the recommendations, how we got to that point, and made sure that we had buy-in from all of them. And this particular crossing actually shifted quite a bit. Originally, it was located about a mile to the east in what we call the bifurcated section that has the large median. And we shifted it back to the west, closer to the County Road 557 interchange. And with that, that allowed us to construct the project well ahead of what it would have been constructed when it was located to the east. So we got the crossing in a lot sooner than we would have otherwise, which was really awesome. Again, Polk County is one of the fastest growing counties in the whole nation, not just Florida, but in the whole nation. And so with that growth, we need to do a lot more to get increasing traffic and the need for these wildlife crossings. So we're really excited to bring this project to ahead, at least a decade, advance it by a decade, and get the wildlife crossing under construction. This particular crossing fits within the Florida Wildlife Corridor. So it's connecting lands from part of Avon Park Bombing Range, connecting across US 27 into the Hilochee Wildlife Management Area, and then more importantly, getting wildlife up into the green swamps. These wildlife crossings that we do couldn't be done without the support of our great leadership. They understand the importance of these wildlife crossings, knowing that they work. They know that it's important for wildlife to be able to connect from one side of the road. And again, safety is paramount for us. When we first said, hey, this is the preferred location, I had never been out there before. We wanted to get cameras out there to verify what types of wildlife were out there, the abundance of the wildlife. Subsequent to that, we had the FDOT Foundation put their cameras out there, and it really helped us out with that to, again, verify that data, collect the data that we needed to help support the crossing and verify that, hey, there's wildlife in this area that would benefit from this. I-4 today has over 100,000 vehicles per day that travel on that roadway, and it's nearly impossible for any wildlife to successfully cross the road.
We have to prove why the wildlife crossing is needed. That's not something you would actually think that we would have to do, but that's really where all of these data sets come in. We use the least cost pathways, we use panther vehicle collisions, we utilize the Florida Greenways Network. Even the Florida Wildlife Corridor is one of our entities that we coordinate with. We also look at conservation lands, which is one of the great things about this particular location is that we had the Hilochee Wildlife Management Area on both sides that have conservation lands. That's important because we don't want development. We don't want to build a wildlife crossing and then a development, whether it's commercial or residential, comes across the street. We don't want to funnel the animals towards them. We want to funnel the animals northward towards more open space where they can create their own territories and not towards people.
We know we've had success down south with the numerous wildlife crossings we have down there, and so we're using that data as well to help support us. But again, having all of our partners and collaboration that we do to help make sure that we do the right thing and get the design this properly. Once we get the location correct, then we start focusing in on the design of the crossing. And so really we use the camera data that we have from the wildlife stare to kind of figure out what the target species is. And in this case, for this crossing, our target species was deer, as well as the Florida black bear. And then hopefully, eventually we'll get a Florida panther to get, across the Caloosahatchee River and up into Polk County and across I-4. That's my goal for, long-term, is to get that panther to go through there. So once we have that target species identified, then we can set the height, the vertical clearance that we need for the crossing, as well as then setting the width. So the I-4 crossing has 8 foot of vertical clearance to allow the larger terrestrial species, deer and bear, to go through. It's got a 61-foot wide opening on it and has a swale on it that allows the aquatic species to go through. It also has a separate 8x4 box culvert that's existing out there that they've extended to be in line with the crossing. And then the overall length of the bridge is 67 feet. Most wildlife crossings, the most expensive thing is elevating the profile of the existing road. So not only do you have to shift traffic over to allow you to build the crossing on the existing lanes, but then elevating the crossing up to be able to provide that vertical clearance underneath there for the wildlife is the most expensive. So for example, on this particular project, we wanted that 8 feet of vertical clearance. So for each foot of profile raise is $1 million per foot. So it was almost $8 million was associated with elevating the profile of the road in this location. So for us as engineers, we're trying to minimize the amount of fill that's needed. This project is unique also with the wildlife fencing. It'll have 10-foot chain link fence that'll run for at least a mile in each direction of the crossing itself, and it'll actually tie around 557, and we have a separate 5x5 box culvert that's included there as well. So wildlife that don't utilize the I-4 crossing can follow the OUC power lines and use that 5-foot by 5-foot box culvert crossing as well. And so we tie that wildlife fencing to that. And then at the bottom, we're actually using what they call herpetology fencing. So the bottom 24 inches or so, the fencing has a smaller mesh pattern that'll prevent your snakes and your frogs and that sort of thing from being able to go through the normal chain link fence and prevent them and have to force them to kind of use the crossing as well. So it's another unique feature of this project.
I can't believe it's been almost 3 years since we started putting the time-lapse camera monitoring this, the building of this wildlife crossing. And now finally we get the cameras and are able to start deploying them inside. It's still pretty awesome to be able to be here and actually put these things in and start the monitoring process of the actual crossing itself. It's a pretty cool day to have reached and have the honor of deploying the cameras in there, so it's good stuff. Now that it's finished and we have cameras inside, it's been really neat to see the use of the crossing, from being able to track animals and see their paw prints inside of the crossing to getting the content of these animals using the crossing. Everything from deer to possums and raccoons. And so now we're just waiting for a bear or a panther to come by and use this.
I feel like that development is really pushing Florida to have to become more creative and a leader in building these wildlife crossings. We're losing our land to development very quickly, and it's fragmenting lands, and it's also bisecting the connectivity that the animals would have. And so when we have animals like the endangered Florida panther, where this could quite literally lead to extinction on an animal, for us, that's unacceptable. And so if we have something that we can do to help prevent that and help save this species, then we're gonna do it.
When I came to this problem of landscape connectivity, I looked at roads that are already in place as lost opportunities. I didn't spend a lot of time hoping and wishing things were different in a road as it was situated. And instead, I focused on areas that didn't have roads yet. But this project was one that changed my perspective and provided me a sense of hope where I had not had hope, where people that were working in gray infrastructure, that were building and designing these linear features that heretofore had been the most disruptive element in fragmenting the landscape for wildlife movement, are now proactively looking for places to restore permeability and link places that for half a century had been disconnected. That was a game changer for me. I had written off places like the Hilochee Wildlife Management Areas as being separate and severed, and they don't have to be. We just need the imagination and the commitment.
For the Florida panther, their home range is primarily in 3 counties in Southwest Florida, the Lee, Collier, and Hendry counties. And so back in 2016, we documented the first female north of the Hilochee River in more than 40 years. So that was huge. So we knew once we got them across the river, then the next step is to get them across I-4. And so that was, another great selling point for this crossing, to get it in sooner rather than waiting. Because wait a minute, we've got female panthers north of the Hilochee River. The next step for them is to get them across I-4, and the only way to do that successfully is to provide the wildlife crossing feature for them. So very exciting to make that come to fruition. And again, in the next 30 years, we have a goal to get female panthers north of I-4. And so, yeah, how awesome would that be to to see that. Yeah, to get that in our lifetime would be just huge. It'd be awesome.
On the road, I've been away for far too long, but now I'm on my way back home. I hear the west winds calling out my name. They're telling me to head your way, down your road and past your gates. Keep your eyes on the horizon. I was looking to belong when I'd already found my home. Won't be long, I'm there before the setting sun, for you to fall into my arms, a place I call